0845 6060 973 is the number to call. Evening, Daniel.
Good evening, Clive.
Good to see you again. Let's talk first of all about an interesting development in the legal world, and this is a barrister's chambers, a rather well-known one, I gather, that has basically folded.
This is terribly, terribly sad, and sad not just for lawyers, but I think for everybody. Tooks Chambers, it's very well known. It's the principal crusading human rights defence chambers in the UK. They've represented the victims of the Hillsborough disaster, the Birmingham Six, the family of Stephen Lawrence. It's like a roll call of all the big cases, the miners' strike, all the miners. Even at the Diana inquest, they were representing perhaps the other side of the social equation, Dodi El-Fayed's family. But every big case they've been involved in, and they folded, they announced it today, because under massive cuts that have been happening to criminal legal aid, they just can't stay open. They cannot keep their doors physically open. And the criminal legal aid budget it's a huge budget. It's one of the biggest in Europe. No one's denying cuts have to be made. It's £1 billion a year for criminal and civil legal aid. And Chris Grayling, the Justice Minister, has said he wants to cut that by a fifth. By £200 million. And you can understand why it needs to be cut. But the problem is that it's affecting so many ordinary people who just won't qualify for legal aid anymore because the government doesn't think their cases fall into the sorts of categories where they should get it, like people who've suffered an injury, people who have are involved in divorces, for example. Anybody in prison, they won't get legal aid anymore. The government is insisting on cutting legal fees across the board. So for criminal barristers, they're imposing a 17.5% cut. Now, people think barristers, fat cats, the usual thing, and there are a lot of very wealthy barristers out there. But like any organisation, it's got some very wealthy people and some not wealthy people at all. A typical barrister, I'm going to ask you this, Clive, have a guess what the going rate is on legal aid for a barrister to do a one-day trial in the Crown Court? Defend or prosecute? Same rate.
I've no idea. £1,000.
OK, now if I tell you, out of that fee, they have to also pay their chambers rent, so the physical building in the temple they work out of. They have to pay administrative staff, telephonists, clerks, etc., etc. Does that help you think what the figure might be?
Even more.
The going rate for a one-day legal aid criminal trial, prosecuting or defending, is £200, £210.
Really?
And
gosh,
of that, 25% goes straight away on rent and staff and so on, leaving about £150. The barrister will typically spend about £20 on travel to get to Cheltenham Crown Court or whatever it might be, leaving 130. And an 8-hour day in court isn't just 8 hours, of course. You'd be furious if you were a defendant and the barrister turned up not having read any papers or thought about the case. Typically, there'll be 4 or 5 hours preparing the case beforehand. So it's about £130, typically for about 13 hours work, £10 an hour. Now, that's above minimum wage, but not that much above it, and to ask the barristers to take a 17.5% cut on top of that is causing a lot of them to literally, like Tooks Chambers, hang up their wigs and say, we've had enough. We are going to become plumbers and triple our income. We are going to work in the administrative department of the local authority, pushing paper around, and quadruple our income. And what that means is a lot of people who want experienced, qualified representatives in court are going wanting because there's no one there to represent them anymore.
So does this mean there are going to be quite a lot of people in the legal profession out of work then because of this big cutback?
There are a lot of people in the legal profession who've been put out of work. And it's going to increase and increase and increase. There's a large number of organisations, now this is market forces, not necessarily a bad thing, who are going to be coming in and pitching for criminal work. Organisations like Securicor, for example, or Group 4 have said they are going to hire lawyers, perhaps freshly qualified lawyers, on relatively modest salaries and use them rather than more experienced, 20-year experienced lawyers who will generally do a slightly better job. It's all about driving the cost down, and there's market forces that say that's a good thing, but if you're the person on the wrong end of an accusation of burglary or rape or anything else and you know you didn't want to do it, you don't want a 22-year-old out of university defending you on a crime that will cost you your career and the next 10 years of your life.
0845 6060 973 is the number. It's the LBC Legal Hour.